So we're going to be focusing on the dollar CAD pair this morning. 8:30 we have medium impact and we have high impact dollar unemployment claims. So we're going to be focusing on dollar CAD primarily, but I'm going to just breeze through the other markets real quick. You should be seeing my charts now. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. As a side note, I saw your question, Norman, regarding the teachings. I committed that every Saturday they'd be online by 8 p.m. That permits me to have a life on the weekends too. I have a wife that demands my time too. So I have to have a little bit of a life. That permits me to do some things as well on the weekend. So you'll have both teachings by 8 p.m. Don't let my wife see that, John. I only have one wife. Sorry. So we have the dollar index on the left daily. We have a really nice setup this morning for a potential run above an old high. We have 99.12. We were looking for 99.20, 99.30 as upside objectives for this week, and we have seen just about every upside level hit. After we hit the 98.05, 98.10 level, we washed out, came down into a 4-hour order block. That's what this is over here, this level here, while we saw reaction. Price came down, hit it, exploded to the upside, went right back through the 98.10 level we identified. Then we had levels to watch going through last night with the yesterday's pre-market video that was shared on the forum. We were looking for the 98.30 level, then the 98.50, 55 level. This candle in here, see if I can get it to show up. Yeah, 98.52. So we were looking for 98.50 to 98.55. We hit that. We've paused, and now we're expanding. We have the old high here within real short distance. So I think that's probably what we're going to be punching through on the heels of the numbers at 8:30. So we'll come back to the dollar in a minute, but euro dollar has traded through the 109 big figure as we were expecting. 109 over here, you see it trade through it. Watch this in here, folks, because this may be, if we don't go through it high, in other words, if we stay inside the body of this candle here, let's do this. If we stay below that at the numbers release, we may see some further expansion down and a run on the stops below 108.50. So 108.50 stops are in jeopardy this morning on fiber. Look at this move here. We talked about this a couple weeks ago as a potential. If we saw upside, we would probably see these equal highs in here cleared out, stops above that. It went right up to that 113 big figure, nailed it perfectly, and then gave up the ghost all the way down. That's pretty aggressive. But I don't see a trade in here as much as I see it on dollar CAD, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I do suspect if we do get the numbers released at 8:30, the injection of volatility will probably send us down below 108.50. Pound dollar. This has been held in consolidation because I think this pair is going to buck the technicals, and I think it's going to run up to that 126.90 level, and that'll take us up to this bearish order block, last up candle right for the down move. We have that exposed range in here, so think about that. The analogy I use for a paintbrush, and the paint stroke has been on the downside here, but when you do that, you're going to have little porous pockets where the paint wasn't distributed on the canvas, so it's going to want to probably go up there and close that in before it trades lower. And ultimately, it doesn't have to trade lower from that point, but right now, it looks more probable that this currency is going to want to go up higher. So if that's the case, this is what I suspect may unfold today at the 8:30 numbers. We may see basically the pound dollar stay in consolidation, okay, and euro trade lower to the 108.50s with a higher dollar running out that 99.20 to 99. Could even see expansion to the 99 mid figure, which will be 99.50 level. And then keeping pound dollar in consolidation for a later move, not today, but a later move at some time, maybe a day to maybe next week even, that it runs up to 126.90. Dollar CAD, we have the liquidity right above this old high back here. So we have 35.25 upside objective with 34.80. So we have about 40 plus pips potential opportunity this morning. So we're going to be looking for a low resistance liquidity run for a run to 135.25. We've had price moving higher on the daily chart. We've already seen price show an unwillingness to go lower. Dollar CAD seems to be in sync with the dollar index finally, and the dollar index looks as it's going to be running to the 99.20 to 99.50 level this morning. So what we'll be doing is we're going down to the 15-minute time frame. Okay. So we are aiming for the stops above here. I gotta keep myself reminded to send these tweets out because I know folks are going to start complaining. You promised us a lot more charts and setups in November, and I said after the elections. All right, so that part's done. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is I'd like to see price. Hang on one second. Let me drop down into a 5-minute chart just to see if there's anything in here I can use for this morning. Ideally, I would love for this to happen. I'd like to see the news come out, send price down to 134.55 to 134.60. So that means I will be looking for a long entry at, so 134.52 at 5 pips, that's 34.57. So I'm going to be buying on a limit at 134.60. But I'm going to market it today. So I'm not going to use a limit order today. I'm going to watch it. If we weren't coming off the heels of the election, I would just simply put the limit order in at 134.60 on a limit just to buy and just let it go with a stop of 30 pips. But because we may see a little bit more additional volatility, I'm going to wait for it to trade below 134.60 and watch it hopefully reach into this level here and then market order it right in as a long. If it runs right from the go, from the numbers, and if it runs right to these levels here, there's no trade. I don't want to trade it in here because if I trade it and buy it here, I got to be willing to allow it to drop all the way down here 30 pips, and that's not what I want to do. I want to buy it after it's come back down a little bit. Yeah, it's so obviously going to go through 99.20 this morning on dollar. So we got about 10 minutes. Unemployment numbers will come out, and the medium impact news will come out for CAD. So we'll see volatility then. Again, the idea is we're going to be looking for higher prices. Now, I don't want to limit the move to just a run on 135.25 or 135.30 stops. It could potentially go a little bit more than that, but I'm just looking for that as the initial objective. So if I'm able to get a long one, I will be taking half the position off at 135.25. So I'm explaining to you before I do it. And then I'll leave the rest on to see if I get anything going into. See, I don't want to see it run from here. I don't want to see that. It needs to stay in the consolidation like this and then drop down on the news. That's what I want. I want them to get sucked into thinking. And really, all I'm really looking for by waiting is I want to see it go below the short-term low. As you can see, there's been no run on sell stops below the market lows today. So I'm hoping that this market driver will happen at 8:30. If we drop down, take those stops out, and close in this range, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I just don't want to see it take off from here. It looks like it's really itching to get up there already. So, but there's rules. You got to stick to them. We could potentially see, let me do something here on the daily chart. Wow. Yeah, we could probably see a nice run. Yeah, I do not want it to run here. Now, it can do this. It can punch above this short-term high and then come down. If it gets into this level, then it'll be allowed to trade up for the 135.25 to 135.30 stops. But if it hits above this high here and the algo starts spreading open, it's not going to give me an opportunity to be long. And that'll frustrate me today. Only because I've only had 700 people asking in an email, are we going to get trade signals this month? No, you're not getting trade signals this month. You're going to get trade examples. This is not a signal service. That starts next year. Couple more minutes, folks. The news will be releasing. I got about 6 minutes or so. Okay, so we're seeing the drop down 2 minutes right before the news. So hopefully we'll see that 134.50 level get hit. Now, it doesn't have to come all the way down and hit this to be good because we've already cleared the stops out below here. I just want to see it come down just a little bit more. I'd rather see it come down just a little bit more. And if it punches in and hits this level here, then I'm going to go right in at the market and go. But I want to see it trade there. Now, 8:30 numbers release. I'm going to probably take it here. I just want to get down below that low. I'm going to take it now. They took the stops below here. Use a 30 pip stop. And a little less volatile time, I would have used about 20 pip stop. But I want to have a little bit of wiggle room today. And if it goes down to that level, I'm clearly wrong. The thought process is, as we were saying earlier, this low would have sell stops below it. They took price down below that. So we're going to be looking for the market to want to run away after that because we have liquidity on, let's go back out to a 15-minute chart now. What we want to see is we want to see it expand aggressively. And once it clears this short-term high, it should start gapping up, reaching for the 134.25 to 135.25 to 135.30 buy stops. I'd like to see the dollar index start expanding on the upside because that would give us some lift on the dollar CAD pair. Okay, it's going to need to start moving in here on the upside. I'm going to start applying a time stop because it should already be going higher. In an ideal world, it should be trading higher by now. Really would like to see it run here. I mean, obviously, that's an optimist. But technically, it should run. It should be making a swing low on the 15-minute chart. And it should, if it's good, it should run here. Otherwise, it's going to want to close in that range, which gets too close to my stop, but we'll see. Dollar index is trying to make a run higher. That would give us some room to elevate on dollar CAD. My thinking is we saw them obviously buy down here, and it rallied up, created a high here. More longs were assumed here. More longs assumed, more longs assumed. So yes, the ideal scenario would be to unload whatever they bought down here that they still have on their books to elevate the market above 135.25 to sell them above that level. The ideal scenario is for the market makers to unload their longs at a optimal, favorable, profitable, whatever you want to call it, level. Yes, this is higher than where they entered at, but when you're this close, the scenario would be, in my expectation, is to see it to drive it above here. Even if it just goes above it by a couple pips, they can just unload them there. To me, that's more favorable as an outcome than to see the market stop here, even though we went above the short-term high here. It's much easier to anticipate people being short dollar CAD and having their buy stops here. You have a great deal of buy stops or willing buyers up here. Yeah, you may have had some here, but look what we've done. We've hit them, we swept through them, but we're holding in a consolidation in here. So my thoughts are that if we can see dollar itself drive up, and we don't lose the ground in here, we should be going up there and hitting the 35.25, 35.30 buy stops. I just don't like it staying in here this long in a consolidation. It's the internal tug of war the trader feels. We're a little far away from equity open. We still got about 40 minutes before that happens. What I'm doing is I'm watching to see if every time that the dollar index upticks 1 or 2 points, are we seeing the dollar CAD in lockstep doing the same thing? So right now we saw an uptick on the dollar index on the left. And are we seeing that same responsiveness in the dollar CAD? Now we just lost a tick, and then I want to see if we downtick on dollar on the left, are we staying higher and not downticking on the dollar CAD? That's what I'm looking for. And the reason why it's important to me to see if the dollar index is dropping a tick or two, if the dollar CAD doesn't drop and it's staying firm, that means they're just allowing the price to build up, and then they're going to release it to the upside. Otherwise, it would drop down when dollar index drops down. It's not so important that it upticks the same time dollar index would go up. It doesn't have to go up in U.S. CAD. You just want to see that it's holding strength in the pair that you're buying. And I'll explain more about that when we teach relative strength. No, not the relative strength index chart indicator, but the concept. I'm quiet because I'm thinking. There's real money behind this. That's why I'm thinking. Live trades demand a lot more focus on my part. And like I said, I don't talk too much when I'm in live money trades. I'm focusing on the price action and weighing out whether or not it's still going to pan out. It's something I should scale off of. So you didn't lose audio. I'm just muting it. All right, so this is turning out to be a high resistance liquidity run. No, it's still defined as a low resistance liquidity run. It's just taking forever. I mean, it won't go lower, which is great. but I don't like the fact that it's spending so much time sideways. I'd rather see it just punch up there, even if it just takes out the 34.95. That would at least let me trim some of the stop off. We have a speaker coming on in a little bit here, in a couple minutes. So I was hoping I'd get some kind of movement just before 9:15. It's times like this when I'm looking at a chart, and obviously as it being in a trade, I look at it and say, okay, now if I was short, would I be comfortable with what I'm seeing? And admittedly, I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't, and I'm not trying to talk myself into the trade. It's I would not want to be. I wouldn't want to be short from where I'm at. Looking at the chart now, I suspect that this going to want to drive through, even at the minimum, just drive above, make a newer high, higher high rather for the day. That would be reasonably expected. And that's really all I'm waiting for. I don't want to kill the video in the live presentation until we get at least up to this high, because then I can trim some of the stops so you can see it, and I'll give you verbal instructions as to how I'm going to manage it, and then you guys can follow along on Twitter through chart. So I'm going to be splicing this video up, all the dead space where no time is hear me talking. I'm going to be just editing all that out and just scrubbing through so that way it's not a long, daunting watching paint dry. But this is what trading's like, man. You get in there and sometimes you got to sit around and wait. And if we were sitting here for the entire trading day, believe me, you'd get really bored. I don't have that much to talk about because I can't focus and rant. Really surprised the dollar index has not swept that 99.12 level. If we see dollar stay flat like it is here, and dollar CAD runs up and hits 35.25, I'll take the whole position off there. But if we see dollar index running and it clears 99.12 at the same time or just after we start seeing the move up into 135, if we see it at all, there's no guarantee I'm seeing 135s on dollar CAD. I'm just speaking optimistically in the event that the trade starts to pan out in my favor. Then I'll take only partials. I'll take half off still. But if we see lethargic price action, or if the dollar starts to drop off on its index on the left-hand side, while the dollar CAD is rallying up into that 35 level, then I'll take 75% of the trade off, or 80% of the trade off, whatever one I can finesse, and leave a little piece on to see if I can get that 36.60 going into the rest of the week. If we get to 34.98, we want to see expansion, aggressive expansion on the upside to 35.25. I have my order ready to execute, removing half of the long position. I want to see if we do in fact get expansion above 134.98. So I want to see it aggressively trade higher in big ranges. Once it hits 134.98, hopefully 135 big figure, gets it excited, and then a run and a spread price up to 135.25 to 135.30. If it does that, I'll peel off half the position. I got one standard lot on. I'll take one half of that off, and I'll leave the remaining balance to see if we can get anything higher going into 11 o'clock this morning. Just about there. And what I don't want to see is it trade up above the 135 big figure and then soup. In other words, reject and aggressively sell off. And that's what I'm sitting here wondering if I should take half off on 20 pips above that and let the remaining balance run. The perils of live trading. Now again, we're watching this level in here. If it hits that 34.98 and higher, it should really run quick up into that 35.25 level. Because once it takes out 35 big figure, there's no stops until you get above the old high back here. So who are they going to sell their longs to? Once we get above 35 big figure, the only willing buyers above their entry is above this high here. So we'll be looking for that to be paired up. Or in other words, see price drive up there. That's the expectation. So far, dollar's helping us. The daily chart on the left-hand side, that's the dollar index. I'm watching the down candle in here to keep price at bay dropping. So far, we just tapped into it. We don't want to see it go below that midway point in here. Okay, it needs to expand aggressively in here now. Can't just poke its head above the 34.98 level. Okay, so we're above the initial day's high. So we should be seeing it run to 35.25. I'm going to take half of mine off here and leave the rest to go. I have a 1 pip stop loss. So if it knocks me out, I'm okay with that. The remaining balance, I'll let roll and see what it gives me. I want to see if it can reach up to 35.30s. We get up to 35.25, my stop will go to 35.10. Keep your eye on that dollar index on the left-hand side. You want to see that drive through 99.12. There's your euro setup we were talking about earlier. Dollar index getting ready to blow out 99.12 over here. Cables bucking the trend like we were talking about. But that wasn't my setup for today. I was focusing primarily on the dollar CAD. The reason why I had the position off here, well, the time of day, the fact that the environment is highly charged because of the U.S. election. It's been rather long in the length of time the trade's been on before positive movement was in my favor, and we just pressed into a new higher daily high. So the longer it stays here without running up there, that's not good. So I want to take my profits and scale off something, get paid. You're always going to be up against the likelihood of you being wrong. So if that's the case, and we're all human, we're all going to likely read it wrong or do something wrong or execute wrong. So when you have opportunity to get paid, that's why we're in this industry, right? We're here to make money. We're not in here to be smart. We're not in here to be proving that we can pull the actual high and low out. We just need that meat, that lion's portion in between. And as long as we can find that every single time we take a trade, it is what it is. You get paid. At this point, if it comes down and runs my stop, I could care less because the conditions have proven themselves a little less favorable once the execution was made on the trade. You're at no You're in no position of control. So you have to either submit to time and let the trade pan out, or lose your friggin' mind and collapse the trade, or or just go in a panic state. Hopefully the market will loosen up a little bit. Next week we'll get a little bit more movement, but right now it seems very skittish. Like we can see the levels it wants to go to, but it's being very reluctant getting there. Like it should have already ran right on up into 35.25 by now. But we still have a little bit of time in the day. It might be a late day punch up in there. But when you take some off the table, it removes all that anxious feeling because you've paid yourself. You've given yourself a reward for doing the risk on the trade. I mentioned earlier why I believed that the British pound wouldn't see lower prices, that would hold in a range or move higher. It's because we have this open range up here, 26.90. So I think eventually we're going to end up going into that level. So if that's where ultimately price is going to come in and close that range, they're not going to permit pound to drop off. They're going to keep it in consolidation or trade it right up into it against the entire market. And that's why I take profits. Now, I would not be buying again. It's too late in the day. Either hold what you got or just let it go. Again, the question is if the book is long for the market maker at 32.80, and they know they got buy stops above this old high back here, why would they just limit the move here and scale everything off and not run 35.25 when they know they have buyers higher than where we're at right now? So that's the internal dialogue that the ICT mindset is. If I have the market, I have all this open profit as a market maker down here. Now I'm speaking hypothetically. I'm not saying I have a long down here. I'm just saying as a role-playing model where you look at price, you obviously have to see this as smart money had long positions here. We can't go back in time and trade that, but we can use it to reference and frame out the context of the general market right now. So while yes, it went above this old high, and I've taken half the position off, the thought process is because I can be wrong. I can be wrong about their expectation, and they can withstand a lot deeper retracement and then still ultimately come back up to that 135.30 or 135.25 level. I'm not willing to do that from my entry point here. So I have to get paid where it can allow me a favorable, profitable level. And when it reached this initial high here, it makes sense for me to take profits there because I could still be wrong. How many times have I shown you in examples of why I take profits early? Because if this is where I expect the market to go to, it could go right to where it's done now and then trade softer. And then next week go right up into 37, 137, big figure. So your trade doesn't have the pockets to weather that many times, especially if you're trading the way I'm framing mine. So I need to be more nimble, especially if I'm day trading. So the question is am I concerned about the 5-minute breaker, the 5-minute order block, if it gives way? No, because the 5-minute order block has no basis of strength, or it's not parent to the liquidity it's seen above those stops. Above the 135.25. What has more strength behind it? The real orders that would be residing above 135.25 or a down candle on a 5-minute chart? Clearly, the orders above that high at 135.25. So I don't concern myself with the intraday, 5-minute charts or 1-minute charts or even a 15-minute charts. If I know the liquidity is resting above the marketplace, I'm more sensitive to time. That's what I'm watching at this point now. I want to see how much time we have left in the day, and does it have the room to drive up in there without collapsing altogether? This is the part that makes trading very difficult. seeing things that would otherwise look like a reason to get out, or because what you're doing is when you're fearful, you'll be looking for evidence to justify that fear. And that's why I said, fear is, F-E-A-R. It's false evidence appearing as reality. And if you are submitting to fear and not submitting to time, because you're going to submit to one or the other. If you submit to fear, you're going to find every reason why you're not insane, that you're not going crazy. There's a reason for you to be fearful, and you're going to go in there and looking for every reason why you should be out of that trade. And that's what causes 90% losing, even when they have the right trade on. So to me, I could care less what happens now. It could go right up here and hit 35.25 and keep on running, and I look like a hero. Great. If it comes down and hits my stop, great. I executed exactly how I wanted to execute based on the information that was given to me in the charts. And that's the benefit of taking profits. Again, listening to folks to tell you that's the stupidest thing in the world, those people are not net positive. They're not profitable. Believe me, if they did that, they would be making money. You're not always going to get the best outcome for your trade, and your trade's not always going to pan out. So with that in mind, it would be rather myopic for you to assume that all your trades have to get full profit or full stop. When the balancing act is, you're assuming a measurable amount of risk, but in an ideal world, you really don't want to lose that. If there's a way for you to see the trade, dissolve before that outcome where your stop gets hit, then you obviously want to take advantage of that. But you also want to be able to submit to the willingness of the marketplace to go to where the higher level liquidity is going to be, because that's where the market's going. It has nothing to do with the lower time frames. The higher time frames, that's where all the money, that's the orders. That's the actual orders that would be residing in there. So if they have a net long book, it just makes perfect sense for them to want to drive it up above that 35.25 level, because there's going to be willing buyers above where we're at now. So if they can be buying at a higher price than the current market price and their book is long, it's a no-brainer. You just simply have to wait for it. Problem is sometimes that trade idea won't pan out from the entry point you've taken a trade at. And that takes a lot of balancing and understanding as far as market structure. And it just takes experience. That's the part you get by watching me do it. And I can't show it to you in examples after the fact because it's not the same thing as dynamically going through like this thing. This has been like a root canal today. All right, folks, let's take a look at the MyFX book so you guys can see where we're at. Today, had a long trade on dollar CAD and took partial profits off just above the initial intraday high, scaled off half the position, and the remaining balance was stopped for 1 pip. And that brings me with this month to 1.35%. And obviously last month is what you see here. So we're going to be trying to tack on, hopefully by the end of the month, I want to show at least a 10% increase in the equity, but my goal is to have 25% increase by the end of this month. So this is the first trade of the month because we were waiting for the U.S. elections, and today's trading proved why it's a little difficult right now and why I've been sitting on my hands. So that's my accountability for this week, so you guys can take a look at that. And yeah, 66.51%. So, all right, that's it. Just give you an accountability.